Keep on riding with us as we continue to broadcast the balance and defend the discourse from the Hip Hop Weekly studios. Welcome back to Civic Cipher. I am your host, Ramses Ja. Big shout out to Q Ward, who is in Los Angeles right now for obvious reasons. And we are going to get him back safe and sound to the studio soon enough to share all that he has learned out there. But in the meantime, we have a special guest in the studio. He is the one and only Vladimir Gagic. He's an independent, nonpartisan political and legal commentator, a former lawyer, and social media influencer who can be found online at Toxic Vlad. That is TOXIKVLAD. Thank you for sticking around for the second half of the show.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So stay tuned, because we're going to be talking about some of the things going on in the country insofar as the president is concerned and the courts. So the executive branch versus the judicial branch, and kind of where things lie. Sure. But before we move any further, it is time to become a better ally, Baba. On today's Baba, we want you to check out nbjc.org. Again, nbjc.org. Founded in 2003, NBJC initially sought to address specific sets of challenges facing the black community: the erasure of black, queer, trans, and gender expansive people, and a political push to define marriage in ways that deny black LGBTQ +/SGL people recognition and access to economic, social, and political rights. Having faithfully and successfully fulfilled its original purpose, NBJC has rebranded. Henceforth, the NBJC is the National Black Justice Collective. NBJC has accepted the charge to lead black families in strengthening the bonds and bridging the gaps between the movements for racial justice and LGBTQ equality. NBJC connects the grass tops to the grassroots authentically. The organization is equipped with targeted messaging and data that brings voice, builds networks, and takes action on behalf of the black LGBTQ/SGL community. NBJC's strategic advocacy efforts have historically focused on the impact of federal public policy on the lives of black LGBTQ/SGL people and Black America as a whole. The organization's cornerstone issues are health and wellness, HIV awareness and prevention, safe and inclusive schools, employment, non-discrimination, relationship and family recognition, anti-violence, and economic justice. Again, I want you to check them out at nbjc.org. And this is my personal cosign for these folks. Dr. Johns, who is the CEO of the NBJC, is a dear friend, has become a dear friend of the show in recent months, and we really do believe in the work that he's done. Actually, both Q and I got a chance to hang out with him in Los Angeles, and we really do want you to check out the work that he's doing, nbjc.org. All right, Mr. Gagic. So we were talking about not being a fan of judges, not being a fan of Democrats, which is fair. A lot of folks that have gripes with Democrats. Would you say
it was the Democrats' behavior to the reaction to his election, not the Democratic Party?
Sure. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you for clearing that up. But do you think that, because many people that come on this show, mm-hmm. and we don't want to be an echo chamber, but many people that come on this show mm-hmm. will say loudly, and indeed I might be one of those people myself, and mm-hmm. in fact I think I would be, that these times are unprecedented. This president is anti-democratic and is not beholden to the entire country, really just one specific facet of the country. There's a lot of people who it doesn't affect them one way or the other, so maybe the strong man mm-hmm.
Sort of
whatever appeals to them, because ultimately if it doesn't affect them negatively and it might affect them positively, they mm-hmm. don't have a dog in the fight. But this president has, at least it feels like, mm-hmm. this president really doesn't care about anybody else. And this coming from a person, and people that come on the show, of course, that have seen attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And when you think about the language there, mm-hmm. that feels crazy to a lot of people, because you would imagine that this country stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's at the heart of this country. It's at the heart of humanity. A lot of people would argue that. This president has fired people who he considers DEI hires. He's defunded institutions that affirm Black history. He has defunded institutions that celebrate Black achievements, which are rare and unique in the story of this country and often overlooked or buried, and so forth. And these attacks feel very pointed and very personal to a lot of people. And a lot of people, again, that come on this show feel that way. And he's doing this all legally. Would you argue that that is imagined in whole or in part, or that people are being extra sensitive to this president? Or would you argue that no, these are valid criticisms of this administration, this is unprecedented, and this president is changing the culture of this country to suit one specific facet of the country and more or less enshrining that into law? What would be your position?
I would say any criticism that a person has is a legitimate criticism. And if you're asking me, is it a legitimate criticism for someone that's, say, African American or gay or whatever to have this particular criticism of the president, is that valid? I've never walked in those shoes, so you can't ask me to know what's in somebody's thought process, right? I will say this, though. I mean, you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think those are all valid points. I think talk about the founding fathers. They're big fans of the Roman Empire, and if you know Roman history, the Romans their whole thing was diversity, right? That's why the Roman Empire lasted for so long. It was actually had an Arab emperor at one point, and those are fair points. I will just say, from my perspective, for somebody with the first name Vladimir, when every single thing you hear out of the Democratic Party is how evil Russia is and how evil Vladimir Putin is, it starts to wear thin. When you start hearing the other side about, the Republicans are this, the Republicans are that, or Donald Trump is this. Because the Republicans were doing it just as much as the Democrats, hating on Russia. Trying to provoke a nuclear war with Russia for some godforsaken reason. I don't know why. And then they talk about that, the P tape and all this stuff that Donald Trump did when he was in Russia, and Putin has all this sort of stuff. We heard that for 6 years, and I was personally affected by it. I was assaulted in court. I think one of the contributing factors, if not the proximate cause, is my name. My experiences of the past 3 and 4 years, 6 years since 2018 in Phoenix, Arizona, have been directly caused by hatred of Slavs, of Slavophobia, of xenophobia, of anything to do with Eastern Europe, anything to do with my name. Okay. And that's been directly caused primarily by the Democratic Party, but also certainly the Republican Party. So
fear-mongering.
Fear-mongering. Okay. Red baiting is the word.
Red baiting. Okay.
Just like Joseph McCarthy back in the day. People are bringing back, how would Ronald Reagan react to Donald Trump being coddled by Vladimir Putin? That sort of stuff. Okay.
So one of the things that I did read about you is you were disbarred.
De facto disbarred.
De facto disbarred. Okay, so talk to us about what that means and what happened to you as a result of this.
So for 20 years, I'm a lawyer with zero history of any sort. I was in the Marine Corps. I'm an honorably discharged U.S. Marine. I was a reservist. For 20 years, I have no discipline, and I'm a public defender. You know what a public defender is? I basically work for free. I have to defend the people in court who are so poor they can't hire their own lawyer, right? For all sorts of charges, from DUIs to whatever else, right? Okay. I'm a public defender. I get a client, his name is Jamal Pennington, who's innocent. I don't think he's innocent at the time, and he's charged with sex trafficking, basically being a pimp. Okay. Turns out the police were framing him. And keep in mind, I am not some radical left-winger. I am not a member of Antifa. I am not a member of the Communist Party. I am a normal tax-paying citizen who's never been in trouble with the law, never been in trouble with the state bar. I don't even speed. I don't do drugs. I don't do any of those things. And when I point out the fact that the police falsified a DNA search warrant for my client's DNA, they just falsified a search warrant. They just made up the evidence to get a search warrant to test his DNA. It's not even a contested issue. It's not one of those things like, oh, maybe they did, maybe they did. No, they did. Everybody knows it. Mm-hmm. The case agent bribed one of my witnesses, a defense witness who says my client is completely innocent. It's somebody else. The case agent, meaning the detective who was running the case, in secret, gave that witness money to change her testimony. And I know that not just because she told me that and because she told my private investigator that. I know that because I actually have the Facebook records proving it. I actually have Facebook written proof that the Phoenix Police Department agent in charge of a case was bribing and tampering with my witness to change her testimony.
So how did this end up with you being
I'm his public defender. Okay. So I bring it. So what do you think a defense attorney is supposed to do in those circumstances? You bring it to the court, right? Okay. And so guess what happens when I bring it to the court?
They side with the police?
The judge, who's a Democrat, they're all Democrats. All these judges are Democrats. Mm-hmm. He files a bar complaint against me.
Based on what?
He says I'm being conspiracy theories, that sort of stuff. Keep in mind, I have this in writing. I have it in writing. I have zero history. He says I have a personal grudge against the prosecutor. This is the same prosecutor who called me a sexist. Just randomly started calling me a sexist and angry. And started resorting to ethnic tropes. And the judges were going along with it. I asked the NAACP for help. Guess who the NAACP sides with? They side with the prosecutor. Because they have zero interest in fighting systematic racism. Zero interest.
That's a bold claim.
It is a fact, and I will prove every single word of it. And so what happens is the judge files a bar complaint against me. The state bar gives me a year suspension without a hearing. Every lawyer in America, it's ordered by the Supreme Court of the United States, every lawyer, before they take your license, it's just like taking your kids. They must give you a hearing. They must give you a hearing to be proven by clear and convincing evidence. So it is harder for the state to take your child from you than it should be to suspend a lawyer. But guess who happens to be the only lawyer in the history of Arizona who's lost his license without hearing, without being defaulted, or without consent? There's only one. Guess who that lawyer happens to be? That's me.
Yeah.
That's me.
Okay. Well, I see why there's a lot to be frustrated about there, and I see why, the pivot to, social media activism and those sorts of things. Now, one of the things that I've learned is that, and maybe these things are not connected, but I seem to recall, I have a friend who's a lawyer in New York City. Brilliant lawyer, went to the London School of Economics, into Harvard Law, and her firm had to change. I couldn't give you the details of it because I'm not a lawyer and lawyers speak a different language. But her firm had to change some fundamental elements about either their culture or whatever it was in order to remain compliant with the current administration's politics. And in doing so, they would be able to retain certain government contracts and represent the interests of the government or something like that. And if they did not make these changes and align themselves politically, I guess that would be the right way to say it, with Donald Trump 2.0, then they would lose out on this significant amount of business. And I was told by her that maneuver is unprecedented, not unlike many other maneuvers, like, hey, your funding is done, we're just going to take away your funding, what they're doing with Harvard, what they're doing with Columbia, all these other places. I know
what you're talking about.
Do you feel like these things are connected?
No, I think what you're talking about, and I think what you're talking about in particular, and it's something that made me very upset, because when Donald Trump was running, his whole kind of thing was free speech, like liberty comes first. You're right, because he put himself out there, and I think legitimately, as a victim of prosecutors and cops gone rogue, particularly FBI agents.
He was the victim. Donald Trump was the victim of that.
Yeah, because he was talking about the classified documents case and the classified documents case in Florida.
Mar-a-Lago.
Yes, in
Yeah,
Mar-a-Lago. And there were a number of prosecutions, and there was also the one in New York. And the ultimate point was you have prosecutors, like the criminal system has been weaponized. That was kind of his whole pitch.
And you think that that's valid, that he's saying that?
Well, I'm just telling you the way I interpret it.
Okay.
The way I interpreted was that
it was
the criminal system, and also the state bar was weaponized against lawyers who were representing his causes in state court after the 2020 election, right? That's
okay. So you got to help me, because I'm sure that now that we're here, a lot of folks might want to hear. So we don't have to dwell on it too much, but so there was a phone call that Donald Trump made in Georgia, saying to, it might have been the election commissioner, I forget the name of the person, but some individual who was in charge of the election, the 2020 election. And he says, hey, I need you to get me, it might have been 30,000 votes. It's like, I need you to get me 30,000 votes. I don't know if that's the number, so please fact check me if you're hearing my voice. But Donald Trump said that on that phone call. The call was recorded, it was leased to everybody. We heard him say that. And then there was the election interference case, right?
Which one was that?
In Georgia, the one where the mugshot famously came from. Okay. Fani Willis prosecuted him. But we heard him say that. Donald Trump has famously had many accusers of him being, put it kindly and say, sexually inappropriate. And he himself has said, I love going backstage in my pageants. Hang on. I'm making a point here. But he himself, we heard him before the first election say, when you're a celebrity, you can just walk up to him and grab him by the P word. He said that, right? And then he loses in court to E. Jean Carroll. He's found liable or something. Somehow he's an adjudicated rapist. This is what the term. This is what the term that
he's not a rapist. No,
adjudicated.
He
rapist.
was found civilly responsible.
Civilly responsible. We'll go with that.
Right.
We'll go with that. Okay. Mar-a-Lago. Those documents. Joe Biden also famously had documents in his garage, right? And Donald Trump had documents in his garage. And the government said that's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to have those documents. Certainly not supposed to have them next to the toilet. And then there was a case there. And then Donald Trump's position was, the criminal justice system is being weaponized against me. And that is the position that you think is valid for him to take?
I think what I'm saying is that's the position he was arguing.
Okay, and
if I can just tell you what I was thinking, that's the position he was arguing. Corollary to that was his position that Republicans are the party of free speech.
Okay.
Corollary to that. And if you listen to Tucker Carlson, he said something that I think resonated with me is, you only get in trouble when you tell the truth. You never get in trouble when you lie, because lies don't matter. It's the truth that matters. So my assumption was, when Donald Trump, and he actually signed an executive order saying that during the past 4 years during the Biden presidency, any acts by the federal government to limit the citizens' right to free speech will be punished.
Okay.
The federal government has no right or no power or no immunity to limit the free speech of private citizens. I was ecstatic with joy. I was absolutely jumping through the roof in joy, because I've been the victim of I've had the FBI at my house because of what I tweeted.
Sure, yeah.
I'm very upset. While Biden was president, all right? While Democrats were running, while all these free speech, all these party of equity and all this fairness and blah, 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 they sent the FBI to my house in secret because I was telling fat jokes on X about the county attorney. But anyway, so when he starts deporting these protesters at Columbia, I forget the names exactly, but the one kid, what was his name?
I think Mahmoud.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how disappointed I was. I can't tell you I wasn't crying, but I was pretty close to it. Because I felt like that was a betrayal. Because I felt like finally we had a president who actually really, really did believe in the First Amendment. Really, really did believe in free speech.
But does this not make my point, that the point I made earlier, where Donald Trump has shown that he is not the president, I mean, while he technically is the president of the United States of America, in terms of the people, he's the president of some people.
He won the vote. Well, then that's all that matters.
But some people, he's acting on their behalf, and other people.
So put up somebody against them. Put up a better candidate. It's very, very simple. Have a primary. Have a candidate who actually goes to the primary. So the Democrats rigged 2016, so Bernie Sanders, there's no doubt about that.
That I know.
You then can't be complaining, oh, the other guy's an anti-Democrat. When you don't even have a primary to put up the candidate that the people actually want to win, that party has forsaked they're done saying, oh, the other guys are anti-Democrats. They've lost that right.
Well, how about this? For the people that are going to compare apples to apples, right? When you look at a Joe Biden was not, to the degree that Trump is, anti all of us.
I disagree with that fundamentally.
Obama, I'd argue the same thing. I'd go back as far as Clinton, because that's as far as I've been, like, kind of politically aware. But I'd throw George Bush Jr. in there as well.
As far as which category? In which category?
Democrats are a part of this country too. Donald Trump.
George W. Bush
Jr.
The Patriot Act guy? The guy who started a war over a lie and killed 10,000 Americans and God knows how many Iraqis?
His father?
No. George W. Bush.
Okay.
Who invaded Iraq and killed how many Iraqis?
That's fair. Fair point. Okay. However, Donald Trump, relative to all of them, has famously been very, it's almost like a witch hunt on Democrats. Everything in his social media posts is Democrats did this, that, and the third. And we're out of time.
Twice.
We're out of time. Oh. So obviously we have to have you back up again, because this is a spirited conversation. I certainly do appreciate your time, because this is something that's really necessary. Obviously you said you're an independent, and we've had people who fundamentally disagree with everything that we believe on this show. There are people with different perspectives, and they're all valid. We believe in that, even if our president doesn't. Right. So again, I want to thank you for your time. Once again, our guest has been Vladimir Gagic, an independent, nonpartisan political and legal commentator, former lawyer, and social media influencer, who can be found online at Toxic Vlad. That is at TOXIKVLAD. Be sure to follow us on all social media at Civic Cipher. You can hit civiccipher.com and make a donation to support the show. The show grows with your support, so keep helping us grow. You can find me on all social media at Ramses Ja. Q, I am Q Ward. And until next week, y'all, peace.